Okay, this is going to be how to present to a client. And a lot of what I'm going to do is talking about what you shouldn't be doing and providing you, hopefully, with some ideas of how to avoid those sorts of things. Because what you're doing is you're selling yourself. You're selling your drawing, you're selling your design, you're selling your skills, you're selling your company. You're selling the fact that you, as a designer, can solve their problems. You also have to recognize that your clients might not understand the design. Most clients are not trained to read blueprints, and so you're going to also have to help them to learn to orient them to what you're doing. I never give a client the original. Always, always, always give them a copy. Even if you're color rendering things, color render on the copy. Copies are relatively easy to get, even large scale ones, so you simply bring a copy of that, mount it to foam board if you can. It's easy enough to do that with the clips, and that way you have something stable and flat. And if it's windy, you've got something to hold on to. If there are kids running through, and it's just easier to do it to something that's a little bit more stable than laying it out on their kitchen table. I would bring all kinds of pictures. These pictures can be on your phone, they could be on a tablet, on a laptop, pictures of the property, pictures of plants that you've decided to put in, pictures of samples of hardscapes. You could bring physical samples of some of those things, but pictures are usually enough, and it's easy enough to put together PowerPoints or other slideshows for your clients. Here's where we start with the don'ts. Don't just read the plant list. Don't just start in the upper left-hand corner and say, here's a geranium, and here's a Japanese maple, and here are some barberries, and I put this dogwood over here. Don't speak to the design. Speak to your clients. You're talking to them. It's their property. If you find an error, don't point it out. If you see that you've made a spelling mistake, or you notice that you put a plant in and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, just keep going and prepare yourself. This is, at least particularly for this class, perhaps something you've not really done before. And as you get more and more practice with it, you'll be able to speak a little bit more freely. But I would use pictures or PowerPoint or notes, anything like that, and I'd kind of run through in my head a little bit how I might want to talk to the client. Because your design and your company and your creativity is more than what's on the drawing. Right? You want to engage them. You want to be enthusiastic. You want to show that you're passionate about their yard, that you're passionate about horticulture, and you want to discuss how this design is going to solve their problems and improve their quality of life. So answer the question, why? Why did I choose these plants? Why did I put them in this location? Why did I design it this way? Use your design words. I've put these plants over here and I've repeated them over there because repetition helps tie things together. You are the expert. They've hired you to do something that they don't know how to do. And even when you're first starting out, you have a degree in horticulture. You've taken classes. So you know more than they do. And if nothing else, you know more about your design for their yard than they do. So go through it like you're the expert here. That might mean that you have to fake it till you make it, and that's perfectly acceptable. So what we don't want to do is simply say, I put a boxwood here, some creeping phlox for color, and a Japanese maple over there. Here's a different way you can phrase that. This boxwood provides year-round interest while remaining small. The creeping phlox is placed to provide an accent during the spring when the pink flowers will lead your eye along the edge of the garden. Finally, a Japanese maple will provide the focal point with its red foliage, deep red fall color, and unique winter structure. That gives them some design concepts. It explains things in a way that's more than just, here's these three plants. It gives them a little bit about why you put them in, and that's the important part. Talk to them. Talk to them like you're their best friend. And I don't mean be overly informal. What I mean is don't speak to the table or to the design. Speak to them. Smile and have confidence. You designed this thing. You know more about that piece of paper than any other person in that room. So have some confidence in your design. Again, fake it till you make it if you need to. That's perfectly acceptable. So let's say you're looking at a design and you're like, oh, she's talking and there are kids and dogs and I didn't quite remember that and maybe I shouldn't have put a barberry in there. So don't say something like, there's a barberry over there with thorns that can scratch. Maybe I should not have put that there. That sounds like you made a mistake, and that's the impression that you don't want to leave. If you catch that during your conversation and start thinking, oh man, maybe I shouldn't have put that plant there. Here's a better way to phrase that. That barberry will add color with the pink foliage in spring and deep red coloration in the summer. However, it does have thorns, and if that looks like it could be a problem for you, there are many other plants that can provide the same color solution. And then use your knowledge to go on and list one or two plants. It doesn't have to be dozens of plants, but list another plant. Why did you put that barberry there? Was it because it had thorns, or was it because of the red color? Is there some other red colored foliage plant that we could put there, or something that mimics the pink, or something that grows in those conditions? So there's lots of other things that you can choose in those situations. Practice, 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 particularly for your first. And I don't mean spend hours and hours and hours and memorize everything that you're going to say. That's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is if you've got 2 or 3 note cards to remind you what you want to say, look at your note cards prior to going to the client, prior to doing your presentations. If you don't want to use note cards, but you've created a little PowerPoint to help you, that works out really well too. That's fine. There's lots of things that you can do to give yourself that crutch, if you will, that allows you to kind of jog your memory so you don't have to have everything memorized. This is one way that I always looked at it. There's 1,000 ways to present to a client, and I'm not saying this is the only way. This is one of the things that I like to do because it kind of takes me back through the process, because particularly as you get more and more into designs and you've got many, many clients and maybe you're doing 10 or 12 designs a week, you're not necessarily going to remember every single detail every single time. But if you review your notes, if you review the pictures, and you start them in on, here's the things that you talked about in your yard, here are the things that I found when we walked your property. We know that you've got sweeping winds coming in from the north. We know that this tree over here is not in good condition, is something we had discussed taking down, those sorts of things. We also know that, you mentioned to me that you want to do some entertaining and your patio space isn't very large, so we were looking to enlarge that. We wanted to also enclose it from the eastern side because you and your neighbors don't get along. Then you can bring out the design and explain how you've enlarged the patio. You've put this screening over here. You've got this view that you've extended over there. You've created these color combinations. You've added a vegetable garden or any of the features that the client wants. So explain to them, like, here's the problems that you have. Here's the things that you want to do. Here's my design and how it solves all of those problems. So it's a very simple way to kind of take them through the entire process. Lots of times, clients will be undoing another company's work. Maybe they've just purchased the house and they don't like the landscape. Maybe the other company put in plants that over time have just not served their function. Don't bash the other company. Never, ever, ever say, oh man, you're right, that company sucks. You never know when something like that's going to come back to bite you. If you need to, you can point out the positives. Yeah, I can see that you're struggling with this particular plant right now, but you got to remember that when it was put in, it served this function. Maybe it's outgrown that usefulness for you, or maybe it's a plant that you just don't like anymore. What we can do is we can remove that plant, or we can move that plant to a different location, and we can install something else that's better suited to your current needs. So there's always ways around the negatives and trying to frame things in a positive light. You might need to orient the client to your plan. As you can see here, this is your front door, this is your driveway. What we've done is we've expanded the walkway and we've enabled people to step out of their car from their driveway and not have to step right onto the grass before we walk up to the front door. As you know, your front door is a little hidden by a very prominent garage, so what we've done is we've added these features to enable somebody visiting your home to know exactly where the front door is, to make your front door a bit more of a prominent feature. So explain some of the things. Explain the north arrow, which way is north. Things that you're going to take for granted, the scale, the size of things, the three-dimensionality of the plants, the fact that you drew a red maple in a circle, but you know it's going to get to a certain size. Those are things that you can visualize in your head. Your client might not have that skill yet. So you might have to orient them to some of those to some of those things. And while I would take them through, here's what we found, here's what you wanted, here's my design and how it solves your problems, that's just one simple way. You might have a different way that works for you. So have an order. Know what that order is. Is it going to be solving design problems? Is it going to be creating design goals? Know your plants. You put the plants in there. So you can, even if you had to look those plants up because you didn't know them to begin with, so maybe you were looking them up while you were putting your design together, that's fine. And it might mean this is where the PowerPoint can come in handy, or some other slideshow that you can remind yourself also of those characteristics, especially if the plant's a little bit newer to you. Make sure you're reminding them of the things that they wanted, because maybe it's 2 weeks between they first talk to you and when you're presenting the design to them. And so they might not remember some of the things that they said. So if you remind them of those things, hey, you said you wanted more entertaining area, you wanted kids' play space, you wanted a vegetable garden, and you wanted a place for pollinators. Okay, so this is where I've put all of those things, and this is how I've organized all of that, so we meet all of your design needs. So it's possible that you want to definitely talk to them in a positive light and make sure that they remember also what they told you they wanted. Bring stuff. Yeah, we used to bring books and catalogs and things like that, and you can still bring catalogs. Books and magazines start to get kind of heavy, especially since we can put things together on a tablet or on a phone so easily. If you've got a laptop, you can organize your photos into different file folders, one for each client. So you simply open up that file folder for that client. You show them the initial pictures you've taken. You've downloaded pictures off the internet of some plants that you've put together. You can name everything so that it's all organized. You can bring up your design inside that. So if you're using Dynarscape, for example, you could have that file stored within there. If you're using Dynarscape Color, you have that file stored within there. So you can store all of those things in one file folder and have it all in one place. And that means that you are reminded of what to talk about, and they can see everything that's going on. So if you're doing hardscape samples, you can have pictures of those. If you bring a hardscape catalog and you show them everything that Unilock, for example, offers, they're going to get overwhelmed. If you give them 1 or 2 choices, maybe 3, they feel like they've made some choices and had some impact into their design, but they're not overwhelmed with all of the options that are out there. Finally, ask for the sale. You're not going to get the sale if you don't ask for the sale, particularly if the client has called you up and is not quite sure. Also, in a competitive bid situation, you might definitely need to ask for the sale. You're going to explain why and how you've solved all of their problems. And it might not be necessary because the client might be ready to sign that contract right then and there, so be sure to have the contract. But you might need to set a date for the next meeting. Maybe this is a preliminary presentation of preliminary ideas and not the final master plan. So set a date for your next meeting if that's needed. All you got to do for a lot of this is just pretend to have confidence, even if you don't. Even if you don't like public speaking, don't think of it as public speaking. It is you selling your design concepts, selling your solutions to their landscape problems. Okay, as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch.